Well, he's a Hollywood movie actor. He's an author of a new book called It's All Good. He has overcome such diverse selections of adversity that it's not funny. But the thing is, I've learned a lot from reading the book because with grace from within, he is still a living, breathing, temporary human with a huge heart and a hell of a legacy. Please welcome Michael Berryman to the Church of Rock. Thanks, Michael.
Hello?
Hello, Michael? Okay, let's see. Maybe there's something. Michael, you there?
We are here.
Oh, okay, sorry about that. My phone is doing weird stuff, but we're good. I appreciate your time tonight.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, I hope you didn't mind that intro.
I didn't hear it.
Okay, well, never mind then. I just gave you some nice words, and you deserve it because you have really overcome such a diverse selection of adversity, yet you show such grace in your book. And it's a really,
well, thank you.
It's a very good book by my friends. This is over a couple of 100 pages with photos. It's all good. Michael, it's a memoir. What made you choose memoir versus, say, autobiography?
Oh, that's a great question. Actually, I had a literary agent. We were starting off with them, and I had never published anything before as far as the book industry. And they said, "Well, since you're well known, you're famous, you're an actor, whatever, but you've never published a book, so you have to have a co-writer or the the stores." We won't be able to, to push your book. And I go, really? Wow, okay. Anyway, I did that round for about 9 months, and what I found out was that the publisher or the agent, they wanted a tell-all book. They wanted a autobiography, and I said, no, it's a memoir. And so I basically fired everybody, and I appreciated my co-writer for helping me put it in chapter form. But I'm a college grad; I could have done it. Long story short, I was telling the story, as I say in the beginning. You're in a comfortable, easy chair, and sitting behind your eyes, and you're seeing everything through. I invite you into the mind of this young boy, and you get to experience everything from his perspective. And they wanted, when you got into film, what was it like working with this person, that person? Give us a little dirt. And I said, no, we're not doing that.
I admire you for that. I really do, man. It's just you're the kind of guy that is not a sheep. You're not a follower. You're a leader, and that's awesome, admirable. And I'd like to know how long it took you to write the book.
I have written little bits and pieces of part of like maybe some song lyrics, open prose, so to speak. I have a minor in art history. I grew up in the 60s, of course. Actually got to work for Bob Dylan. I was one of his security guards for 2 years at his home. But see, that would be in the subsequent book. What happened was, as I tell in the memoir, after I had my skull surgery, and I don't remember anything prior to that except, getting my hair cut, which is a pretty interesting little piece in that chapter. And so it was kind of like getting a fresh start on life, being reborn. So when you have a visual difference, you are treated slightly differently, and I'm not playing my violin here when I'm just being very objective. I wanted to just share the emotional content as I would call it, and then people can share and compare their own life as the story progresses.
Yeah, you did a very good job at that. And for anyone that doesn't know, just very quickly to let you know, dear listener, Michael grew up with a rare genetic disorder. His father was a neurosurgeon. His father's name was Sloan. And it's a very interesting tale of survival and grace. And it was really just a joyous read for me, honestly. And I read a lot of books. So
you're a reader.
I'm a reader, yeah, but not that kind of reader. Like, I don't know what you're going to say next. But, you know, I wanted to ask you, too, this is a weird one. I was looking through my copy of the book today, Michael, and I noticed back in the back, there's a one page that looks like it appears to be signed in a gold Sharpie. Is that printed, or is that indeed autographed?
That's actually I autographed it, and then when I sent the manuscript to Barnes and Noble, Amazon, and Kindle, I mean, they produced. That's how it came out. You know, you can still see it. It looks a little better on the hardback because it's a little larger print. But you know, that's my actual signature.
Yeah, it looks really. I couldn't tell. I'm like, man, they really got me on this one. Normally, I can tell, but that's cool. Thanks for answering that. You know, originally when we first talked, I want to say thanks to Janice Blythe and give her credit for hooking me up with this interview and with you. I thank you, Janice. You're a sweetheart. And
she is wonderful.
She is. You guys were in, of course, The Hills Have Eyes, which is a very popular film that a lot of people love those movies. You were in, of course, one of my very favorite films of all time, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I mean, who couldn't say that's amongst one of the best films ever made, really? It just is. It's a masterpiece.
It is a masterpiece.
Yeah, you played Ellis, a guy that was lobotomized. And, wow. Just as a little kid watching that was so profound, the whole thing. And even your bits in the movie were stuff that stuck with me for all these years. You know, it's weird, the things that hit you as a kid that you'll remember. It's been
on cable recently, and on YouTube. They have a lot of segments where they analyze Cuckoo's Nest, and they discuss how it was filmed, et cetera, et cetera. It was my second day as an actor. Cuckoo's Nest. I was there for 127 days, living in a hotel and having an experience I had never ever contemplated or expected, and it was quite astounding. I think one of the aside from the story, the content and the quality of the acting and the message and the humanity that is in Cuckoo's Nest, as a filmmaker, I love to watch a lot of films like from Czechoslovakia, nature. I'm a photographer, so I like to see the framing. And in Cuckoo's Nest, for instance, I learned how and why you help the director put the objects in the frame, because that is one of the major visual aspects that a director does. And the final cuts, actually every 6 days a week we worked, and during lunch they would show the rushes. They're called dailies, and that's the footage that we filmed just a day or two before. And I would sit in every single day, and I would analyze and look for a nuance, like the space between the actors. There's a scene where we're getting our medication, and the camera is in the little cubicle with Nurse Ratched, and we're all lined up, and Milos, he made sure that, he would direct you. He'd say, okay, you step a few inches to your right. Ah, great. Okay, I like that. And as you move along, I want you to find the lens. Milos Forman gave me some wonderful advice. I asked him one day, I said, I'm an artist. I can't draw well, but I studied art history. What's a skill set I need to understand about motion pictures? And he's puffing on his pipe, and he had me follow him to we had Panavision cameras, and he has me look through the eyepiece. And here's what he tells me. He says, I want you to have a love affair with the glass. And then he handed me a book on cinematography, and I devoured it.
Wow.
And so when you see a film, it can be a big budget or a little budget or an independent film, there are so many qualities to look for, aside from story and performance, color, tone, timing, and what the space between objects in a frame, if they're just moved one one side or the other just a little bit, it creates tension. And it's just another quality. It's like, I wish I was a musician, because there's a great example of that, a symphony of talent, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, speaking of musicians, a couple of listeners reached out to me and said that they were big fans of your appearance in a couple of the MLE Crew videos. Of course, Smoking in the Boys' Room and the introduction to the band song Home Sweet Home. How did your connection with MLE Crew come about?
It was one of the most hilarious conversations I ever had. See, I was discovered by George Powell. I bumped into him in Venice Beach. I had a little hippy dippy store there. I tell a story in my memoir, of course. And he goes, "Hey, are you an actor?" And I go, "No." We were hanging out at his daughter and son-in-law's antique store, the Gallimaufry. It's very famous on West Washington. And he said, "Well, you have an interesting face." And I said, "Oh, I've never heard that before." So we're laughing. And he says, "No, seriously." And he takes his hand and he hands me a business card, and it says Warner Brothers, George Powell. And I go, "Do you know who you are? You produced The War of the Worlds, A Time Machine, Journey to the Center of the Earth." And he smiled and patted me on the shoulder, and he says, "Look, just call my office." So I called his office, and they had me come out for a meeting, and they said, "Well, you're going to be the coroner and Doc Savage." And I got the script, and I went to Warner Brothers and got my wardrobe all dialed in, and we filmed our scenes at the Harold Lloyd mansion. And then I got a check for a couple $100 after taxes, and I figured, well, I wonder what I'm going to do now. And as I was preparing my four-wheel drive Dodge Power Wagon with a homemade camper to take it to Alaska, I wanted to homestead. I'm an expert with chainsaw and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, before that happened, I got a phone call, and it was from a man and a woman called Michael Fenton and Gene Feinberg. They were very famous casting directors. I didn't know who they were. And they said, "Would you please come to Culver Studios and meet with Milos Forman and Saul Zaentz?" And I go, "Well, I don't know who they are, but why do you want me to do this?" And he says, "Well, we're doing a movie called One Flew Over the Cuckoos Nest." And I said, "Oh, does it look like I've had a lobotomy because I had skull surgery?" And they laughed and they said, "Just come on down." And I did, and the rest is history.
Can I ask you this? And I'm sure it's probably something you've been asked a lot, so I apologize. But just even briefly, was Jack Nicholson cool?
Jack Nicholson is one of the most talented and honest, straightforward, no BS, no ego, wonderful human being I've ever met. We all became family. I had a chance to be in touch with Louise Fletcher before she passed away. My next door neighbor at the hotel was Will Sampson, of course, and I got to visit him at his brother's house and before he passed away. But Jack Nicholson is such an honest fellow. I asked him one day, I said, "So Jack, what would you do if you weren't an actor?" And he said, "Well, Michael, if I was your height, I would have tried out for the Los Angeles Lakers." Because we had our shooting schedule such to where he could go see every Trailblazer game.
Wow!
And the basketball court outside, he has good moves. He's got the good dexterity, and he's pretty athletic. But there was a scene. Okay, dig this. We've been filming for a couple of weeks, and there's a scene where Charlie Cheswick, Sid Lassick, and I don't pull punches, I tell it straight, just like it happened. where he starts, his character starts getting out of character. And what I mean by that is he starts becoming like Jack Nicholson, and he starts to get sassy and sassing the nurse, etc., etc. And see, we would not, as patients, be behaving in that manner. So one day we're doing this scene about the cigarettes, and Sid Lassick starts to say, "I want my cigarettes," and he swears, "What gives you the damn right?" Blah blah blah, and we were doing take after take after take after take after take, and I'm looking at the guy playing Benzini with the shaker, really Joe Elick, super nice guy, and I go. I'm looking at him, and he's giving me a look back, and he's going, "Something's going to happen." And all of a sudden, Jack Nicholson gets up, grabs two of his buddies, and he says, "Come on, we're going to go out to my motorhome," and walks off the set. And we're all looking at each other, Chris Lloyd, and I'm looking at Chris. I go, "What's going on?" And he says, "I don't know." And Jack very slowly turns around, and he says, it's just another day, another 10 grand. And he looks at Sid Lassick, and he goes, "Right, Sid?" And you have to understand, we had world press, people from every country, just about every day on the set, and we're all watching this come down. And we had about 45 minutes of dead time.
Wow.
In other words, we couldn't finish the scenes or continue shooting unless Jack was there.
Wow.
And he made a point, because Sid was trying to upstage and steal the scene,
Ooh.
which was not what would be happening as Milos was directing it, and as the story was unfolding, and he was just destroying. It was just wasting time. And then the next thing I heard was Sid got called down the hallway. They went into a room with the director and the producer and Michael Douglas, and all we heard was screaming and yelling. And at one point they said, "We should just, if you don't straighten your act up, we'll replace you and we'll sue you for all of the reshooting." They were just yelling and screaming.
Wow.
And then I heard more yelling and screaming, because one of the ADs had to go to the caterer and go, "Hey, we're ready for lunch," and they're screaming and going, "We're not ready yet. What do you mean? No, this is not finished cooked," and blah blah blah.
Nightmare.
Yeah, it was an odd day.
Sounds like it. Yeah, I mean, you've done so much, and I'm seriously not trying to skip over the acting stuff. It's just that this being a rock show, I'm super, as a huge rock freak, I'm dying. You know what? Sister Tracy's reminding me about your philanthropic endeavors, especially those focusing on environmental conservation and support, for individuals with genetic conditions as well.
Yep, we're going to hit on those real quick, but first I want to, I was teasing you with the other, but it was good information.
That's awesome.
My agent that I got, Lou Deucer, God bless him, he had the old Earl Flynn mustache, almost white hair, and everybody knew Lou. He's a straight-up guy. And he calls me up one day, and he goes, hey, kid, I got you a gig. And I go, "Oh, Lou, that sounds pretty funny. Gig from you." I says, "Okay, well, what's on your mind?" And he says, "Well, there's a band, a rock and roll band, and they had their people called me, and they want you to be in a music video with them." And I go, "Oh, okay. What's the name of the band?" And I've never heard of them before. And he says, "Let me look at my page here. Oh yeah, it's called MLE Crew." And I go, "I've never heard of that." And I says, "You should." Okay. So I called up a friend of mine who's a film historian and knows music really well. And he goes, "Oh, MLE Crew," and he told me all about it. And I go, "Wow." So I had my friend drive me to the set, and I've been around the block, and I figured, well, I should not be driving. Should have a designated driver. And we arrived at a auditorium, where the stage was for that scene. And I'm kind of hanging around, and there's all these teenagers and stuff, and then somebody says, "Hey, come on, the guys want to meet you." So I go behind the curtain on stage, and there's Nikki and everybody, and they had two galvanized buckets full of ice, and probably 2 cases of Coronas, and about 6 quart bottles of Jack Daniels. And I go, okay, I'll have a beer and kick back with these guys. And then we just started talking, and they were so down to earth. And every time when the director was ready for them, they were professional. They got right on up, and they did their work. And during one of the breaks, I was goofing around. I said, "Hey, Mick, check it out. I can wiggle my ears." And then Tommy lost his beans, and he goes, "Oh man, we got to do that where we pull your wig off." And I said, "Oh, okay." And so we did. We had an absolute blast. And one day I got I had to go do some voiceover work for a film, and I'm in the recording studio, and we're knocking it out. And during one of the breaks, the guy who's recording hands me a worksheet, and it says this band, this musician, reinsert this, that, fix this, fits that sound, and he highlighted a line, and it said, "Motley Crue, Smoking in the Boys' Room, ear wiggle, reinsert 4 seconds."
Nice.
And I go, "What does that mean?" He says, "Well, one day the ear wiggle wasn't on MTV, and they received so many phone calls and complaining about that they had to put it back in, and I'm the guy that edited it back in. So you never know where your talent's lie."
That is bizarre and cool. That's a funny story, man.
And it's true.
I love it. Yes.
And the philanthropic, I learned those lessons as in my memoir. I mentioned my Aunt Peggy and Sophie, my grandmother. And there's a lot of wisdom in the memoir about those 2 lovely ladies that taught me some very interesting things. My father used to make house calls. I would be driving with my dad sometimes, and he would point to somebody on the street, and he'd say, "You see that person? You see how they're shaking? You see how they're moving their body?" And he would diagnose them. Okay.
Wow.
My father was Muhammad Ali's neurologist.
Wow.
So I remember my father taking me to some of the state hospitals. Sometimes he was a real doctor. What happened in California when Ronald Reagan he harmed those people quite severely by letting them sign themselves out. And I started to understand compassion and humanity at a very, very early age. As in my memoir, I mentioned my friend Billy, who had polio, and he had the crutches and the braces, and he walked in a clanky manner. That introduction to his character in the book is pretty poignant. So being teased as a kid, yeah, it all happens, but how do you heal those scars? Well, one day I was working on a film, and I was sitting in the makeup room, and a gentleman was sitting next to me, and it was Paul Newman. And we got talking to one another, and he introduced me to the Bogey Creek Gang and the Hole in the Wall Gang, which is an organization founded by Paul Newman, General Schwarzkopf, and Arnold Palmer. And they find parents with children that have facial cranial birth defects, or anomalies as they're called, and they converse with their doctors. And most of these reconstructive surgeries are quite expensive, and your insurance doesn't always cover it. So, like the Paul Newman products, not only do they taste good, but all of that philanthropy goes to support these families and these children, and they fly them out. There's Bogey Creek in near Orlando, Florida, and they have built 2 others subsequently. And they bring the whole family. They even have people house sit their home if they need to take care of things.
Wow.
Check animals, etc. And then everybody gets to understand what the procedures are. And I had 1 year I went and I needed to have some surgery done on my eyes to close the edges of the eyelids because I get dry eye, and I snored a lot, so I had to have a deviated septum fixed and then some cheek implants put in to support my eyes underneath. And one of the doctors, when we were at camp, said, this one little girl needs some more surgeries, but she's refusing. Could you have a talk with her? So we made a bet. I said, look, I'll get mine done if you can encourage me, so that it's not too scary. I was letting her be the adult here. And she said, oh, it's okay. Your face will be all puffy, but it'll get better. And I said, you do understand that your surgeries, I know you don't want any more, but it'll be the best doctors, and it's all being paid for, and it's going to be okay. And so, do we have a handshake deal? And she shook my hand, and we said yes. So here's the deal. I sent a picture of my face after my surgery to her, and she sent me a picture of her in her high school prom dress.
Wow.
And the surgery was lovely. You see, that's the kind of philanthropy that matters. When I was living at the Wolf Sanctuary with Tanya Carlone from Wolf Mountain Sanctuary, Native American Apache, and at a place called Stars of the Desert, and it's in Tuba City. It's the Navajo Nation.
You were there
capital.
10 years, right?
Well, many years, and we even had President Ford come and visit one day, but that's an aside story. We were, as the honored guests, you come and they have a banquet for the children's achievements for the year. Every child gets to be honored, and you get a 3x5 index card, and there's all these families. It's at night, and you're on the stage, and the children get acknowledged. Okay, and you would read 3, and then another guest, honored guest, would read 3, and so we're going through the motions, and I get my next card, and here's how it reads. Mary has cerebral palsy. Mary has a very difficult time holding her spoon, and when she eats a bowl of peas, she shakes so bad they fall onto the table. Now, that was not the only thing that she was being honored for, because she had good grades, etc. But this was something very specific to her life and her situation. And I'm reading this, and I'm going, come on, man, you're a pro, you're an actor, you're a human being. You can't choke up. You got to be strong in this moment, because I'm teared up. Here she is, sitting right in front of me with her parents, and they're listening to every word. And then it goes, the date that she started with this task, and with the calendar day of when she could eat her first bowl of peas without dropping a single pea. But there was more that she had accomplished during the year, but that was just such a honed in bullseye of reality, you see.
Wow.
You can be a graceful ballerina today, and tonight take a slip on a bar of soap in the shower, and your life can be totally changed.
And on that note, you're listening to an interview with actor Michael Berryman at KSKQ. KSKQ is 89.5 FM Ashland, 94.1 FM Medford, Oregon, and I apologize about interrupting, Michael.
no harm, no foul. You're in the I love the Northwest. I have family in up near Camino Island, Portland. I hope that they can help Portland. It really needs some help. It's one of my most favorite towns, cities on the entire planet. It's a beautiful part of the country.
It really is my favorite big quote unquote big city as well. Can I ask you a question about John Densmore of the Doors?
Yes, absolutely.
The last time you and I had a kind of a private conversation, it was very compelling, and I really enjoyed it. We talked for about 45 minutes, and it was amazing. You mentioned so many cool things, and I made notes. One of them regarded John Densmore of the Doors, and I wonder if you could expand. And also, did you ever meet Jim Morrison?
Well, I'll start with the latter. I did not meet Jim Morrison, but I was attending the California State Polytechnic College. It's called Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo. That's where I went. That was there in 1966 to 72. That's where I went to college, and there was a concert one night. It was a psychedelic pillow concert, and if you brought a psychedelic pillow, you could get in for free. Of course, it was in the basketball gymnasium. There was a stage, so we had our girlfriends, make the pillows. We bought the material, and so there was a big pile of hippies and pillows right on the floor in front of the stage. And that night was a band called The Doors, and so that's as close as I ever got for me to ever meeting Jim. But my sister was a midwife for John Densmore, and she lived in Topanga Canyon. And one night we were all having dinner with various friends, and John was there, and my brother Greg is a wonderful drummer, excellent artist, and we were in the kitchen getting a drink or a bite to eat or something, and it was just me, John, and my brother. And my brother says to John Densmore, he goes, "Mojo rising," and the look on John Densmore's face was like, I can't. He goes, "I can't talk about it. I can't talk about it." So here's the story. The story is that Elektra Records had a contract, and I think it was Fantasy Records. Anyway, it was my executive producer, Saul Zantz from Cuckoos Nest. He also had a record company, and they had signed the Doors, and they had a contract for X amount of albums. Well, after Pamela was hanging out with as Jim's girlfriend, hanging out with the Velvet Underground, and behavior in a direction that was not the Whiskey Man. Let's just put it that way, being polite. And Jim wanted to do his poetry. He was getting kind of depressed, and he didn't want to be the Lizard King anymore. And the record company says, "I don't know, man. No, you're putting on weight. You're growing a beard. We don't think that's cool." Well, come on, really? The guy's an artist. Let him do his thing, in my opinion. So they did American Prayer, and that got them out of their contract. So the way I heard the story is as follows. After they did the last album, and the band would not be sued, Jim was supposed to fake his death and go wind up in Morocco and disappear. And the way I heard it was that he would make a phone call to the record company and leave a message on the recorder, and they would just say two words: "Mojo rising."
Wow.
So, and Jim was a very intelligent gentleman. Oh, and as a matter of fact, when I was doing some of these the programs for the schools, philanthropic work you can call it, doing drug programs and anti-bullying programs through my Optimist friends and some other organizations. One of my sponsors was Richard Kroom. Richard Kroom, my good friend Richard, was the chief of police for Dade County, Florida, and he was there the night he had to book Jim Morrison for indecent exposure, which was bullshit. It wasn't. And he said, well, his father was an admiral, My Lord, he was the most intelligent person I ever booked.
That is hilarious. Yeah, his dad was a rear admiral. That's crazy.
That's right.
Wow. Oh gosh, you have so many things. I have notes here, but I don't know how much time we have. But you told me an interesting story about Joanie Mitchell as well.
Yes. Yes, I grew up in Santa Monica, and there's a club. It's called the Troubadour. It's very famous. I loved folk music. I had a buddy in high school who played a great Martin guitar. I can sing pretty well. We were kind of folkies. We did our folky thing around 1965, 66. And he said, hey, Joanie Mitchell's going to do a sound check at the Troubadour about 3 o'clock. So we got to skip class and hop on the blue bus, the Santa Monica blue bus, and go on up there. Well, I sold advertisements for the yearbook, so I stole a whole bunch of stamped signature get out of class pads from the dean's office when I was using their phone to dial in advertising for the yearbook. So we split, and we were there, and they weren't even open for business. The kitchen was getting set up, and there was the riser for the stage, and we're sitting right in front, and there's nobody else but my buddy and me, and they're setting up the equipment. Here comes Joanie Mitchell, and she's doing a sound check, and she says, "Oh, hi guys, how's it going?" I was enamored. I've always had a big crush on her for every possible reason. She's beautiful, and what a wonderful, talented woman. So we knew all of her songs, and so she sang for like about a little over 20 minutes just for us. What song you want to hear next? And she was super nice. And then on a side to Joanie Mitchell, I just finished the X-Files in Vancouver, and I rented a car, and I'm driving down at night, Highway 101, and I'm getting Canadian radio, and they were interviewing Joanie Mitchell. And she's talking about how when who was it? The guy that had a liver transplant. He was in
David Crosby.
David Crosby. Yeah, she said. She goes, David emailed me a request that I send him some song lyrics. So I called him up and said, David, you're very talented. Write your own damn songs. And I'm going, yeah, that's the gal. That's Joanie Mitchell. And just a heavenly, wonderfly heartfelt human being. What a beautiful woman in every regard. Gosh, there was a time in Laurel Canyon where all those wonderful musicians all lived in all those houses up Laurel and Benedict Canyon. It was a heavenly time. You would just want to hang out in any one of those houses. I mean, the song "Our House," come on, that's from Stephen Stills. Joanie Mitchell and Stephen Stills were an item in a house in Laurel Canyon.
Yep.
And oh man. And Stephen has one of his latest CDs. If you haven't heard it, I highly recommend it. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, that whole scene was there was a film that came out a couple of years ago that was documenting the Laurel Canyon scene, but they really did skip over like Joanie Mitchell and a lot of people, so there must have been legal reasons for that, but it was still a good film.
I mean, there's a wonderful album called Blues from Laurel Canyon.
I have not heard that, Michael.
Oh my gosh, that was what was the artist? Blues from Laurel Canyon. He put out a ton of albums. I can't think of his name. I can see the title right now, but Google it.
Awesome. And there's only one other rock thing I want to bring up. I'm not sure if you even want to discuss it. If not, that's cool. Do you feel like talking about your association with Bob Dylan?
Oh, no problem at all. I worked for Bobby for 2 years as one of the security guards. I got licensed. I carried a .41 Magnum and knew how to keep people away. Had my own German Shepherd wolf named Nishka. I worked mostly graveyards, so I could have the daytimes free for an audition. And I remember Bob was on tour when and you got to understand, this is just some local people. There, he had 3 other families living there. So one lady who would take care of the animals, and then there was Howard and Joan Alk, who helped Bob out when he was in Greenwich Village when he got his career started. And so he was very kind and took care of them, and brought them out to the California property. And one night, very very late, the car comes in. Bob's coming home from being on tour. I'd not met him yet. And I got off at 8 o'clock in the morning, and about 7:30, here comes Bob with a cup of coffee, walking up that little guard shack. Looks like a Gilligan's Island little shack. And my dog, Nishka, she walks up to him, takes her stand, and she barks. And I go, Nishka, that's the boss. He's cool. Be nice. And then she started to wag her tail, and he goes, "Oh, Bobby didn't have any dogs at that point in time. He had chickens and a couple horses, and so we had a conversation, and he said, "Hey, Michael, last night I heard some noises out by this area, that area." I said, "Well, I was making my rounds, walking around the property, and Nishka flushed out a coyote that was trying to get into the chicken coop." He goes, "Really?" And he goes, "Oh, good dog, Nishka." And my brother also worked there, and his dog, which was my dog's puppy, she gave birth to a litter of pups under the guard shack. And one day, Bob's walking by the shack, and all the other puppies running underneath the guard shack, and then one of them stands his ground and is barking at him, and he goes, and then he calls my brother later, and he goes, "Could I have one of those pups, please?" And that became a dog called Hero, and Hero lived his whole life on the property, and is buried on the property.
Wow!
And then since then he's gotten Mastiffs and other dogs, but that was the first dog he had. So while Bob was asking me about the noises that we heard and we investigated, the radio was on, and the radio is, I always listen to FM radio, and the radio is playing my back pages. So before we end the conversation, I look at Bobby and I go, and I just met the guy, and I go, "Hey, you hear the radio, Bob? The kid, this kid on the radio, his lyrics are incredible. He's quite the writer. But do you think he could have a career with a voice like that?" And I figured, come on, I'm getting $10 an hour, armed to carry with a canine, no overtime, no health insurance, and he just starts to laugh, and I figure this might get me fired. And he starts walking away, and he's shaking his head. He turns around and he looks at me, and he's slapping his leg in laughter, and he goes, points at me, and he goes, "Maybe." Just maybe, and he walks away. And then another night, about a year later, one night, Bob had forgot to tell me that he was going to jam with George Harrison that night. And here's how it comes down. I'm doing graveyard. It's a little bit after midnight, and this limousine pulls in, and we were very on alert because some people were problematic to Bob, so security's a good thing. And I asked the driver, rolled down the window, and I says, "How can I help you?" And he says, "I got George Harrison here to see Bob Dylan." And I said, "Well, I don't know who this Bob guy is, and this is private property. You're going to have to turn around and leave." And then I hear a groan in the back seat, and I said, "By the way, could you roll down your window so I can see your version of George Harrison, whoever that would be?" And it's George Harrison. So he turns around, and then I said, "Well, you have to leave." And then I stopped the car, and I go, "Oh, by the way, if for some incredible reason my telephone rings, we could continue our conversation. So they drive off, proper protocol. Bobby calls me and he goes, "Oh, bring them all the way up to the front of the house. Bring them up to the band room." So we do that, and they high five and they were jamming, and a full moon over the ocean in Malibu, and I'm sitting on the deck of the porch, and then my dog has free reign, and I can take care of business, and I'm listening to the two of them jamming out at about 3 o'clock in the morning. It was wonderful.
Wow, what a great memory that is, and what a great tale. Thank you for sharing that one.
And I got one more quick one for Bob. I'm at the Santa Monica Civic with my Marine Corps brother-in-law, and he says, "You have to wear a tie." And he loved music and folk music, but he says, "We're going to go to a concert. We're going to see Bob Dylan." I go, "Tie, really? Oh, okay, George." So we're there. We look around, and I go, "Dude, we look really stupid." He said, "Yeah, lose the tie, lose the tie." So Bob comes out, and he does the first half of his set acoustic. Then he walks off stage, and then they bring in amplifiers and stuff, and he comes back out on stage with Clyde King, a singer, and a couple other musicians, and he's playing electric.
Wow.
The first time ever. And we're all folkies and purists, right? So the first song, there's not a lot of applause. The second song, kind of the same thing. And I'm looking at his face like, wow, he's kind of bumming his trip. And then the third song was All Along the Watchtower.
Yeah.
In electric, and he blew the roof off the place. Now, I told Bob Dylan this story, and he goes, "You were there?" And I go, "Yeah." And you looked bummed out, and I thought you were going to cry, man. But when you did All Along the Watchtower, what did we do? He says, "You guys gave me a ton of love," is what he said.
Wow.
Yeah. Bobby's a pretty cool guy.
I just love that song, and I love that story, and I love Dylan. Thank you for sharing that, man. That was so cool.
You're very welcome.
So cool. I guess we'll have to, regrettably, we'll have to wrap this up because of time, but man, I'm telling you, I could talk to you for another hour or two easy.
We'll have to do it again, but I had to self-publish my memoir, and to all the listeners out there, I hope life is treating you well, and I could sure use your help if you're interested in the book. It's a really good read. It's called It's All Good. You can go to Amazon and pick it up. It's Kindle or Barnes and Noble online, and I have a Facebook page, and it's I don't do a lot of social media. I'm 75 years old, and I got things to deal with. But everybody has a story. Yeah. So if you like the book, I appreciate it. I hope you have a good time with it. So
yeah,
tomorrow's a new day, and make the best of it.
Thank you for those words of wisdom. The book is It's All Good, a Michael Berryman memoir in his own words. We are delighted to say it's been a pleasure talking to Michael Berryman. I hope we can do part 2 down the road. That would be great. And I'd like to wish you the same good vibes you're sending us, Michael, and hope that you and your family over there in Michigan, I hope you're doing just fantastic, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, and whenever you feel like doing part 2, just give me a shout, and remember, it's all good.
Michael Berryman. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear a round of applause for Michael Berryman. Here we go.